favorites call the flour, obtained from the divine wheat grain. And the holy reconciling or neutralizing principle is the substance issuing or obtained as the result of burning, or as your favorites say, from fire. For a better elucidation of the thought I've expressed concerning the significance of a permanent fusion of diverse sourced cosmic substances, let us take as an example the said relatively independent totality of substances which in the formation of this prosphora, or bread, is the active principle, namely the relatively independent totality which is called by your favorites water. This relatively independent totality of cosmic substances, named there on earth water, being in itself, one might say, a natural mechanical mixture, can be preserved exclusively only in conditions of conjunction with common nature. If the connection of this water with common nature is cut, that is to say, if a little of this water is taken out of a river and kept separately in a vessel, then after a certain time, the water in this vessel inevitably begins to be gradually destroyed, or as it might otherwise be said, to decompose. And this process, to the perceptive organs of beings, usually smells very malodorously, or as your favorites would say, this water soon stinks. And the same will proceed with the mixture, as in the given case of this said water and flour. Only a temporary mechanical mixture, or what is called dough, will be obtained, in which this water, after lasting also a relatively short time, will inevitably begin to decompose. Further, if this dough, that is, water mixed with flour, is baked over a fire, then, thanks to substances issuing from or formed from this fire, substances which in the given case, as I've already said, serve as the third holy neutralizing force of the sacred law of Triamazikamno, there will result in the given case a chemical fusion, that is, a permanent fusion of substances, as a result of which the new totality of substances obtained from this water and the flour, namely the prosphora, or bread, will now resist the merciless Hieropas. That is to say, it will not decompose for a much longer time. The bread made in this way can dry, crumble, or even be to all appearances gradually completely destroyed. Yet from this process of transformation, the elements of the water will, during the said fairly long time, be no further destroyed, but will remain active for the said time among what are called the enduring Prosphorian active elements. And in the given case, my boy, I again repeat that if the contemporary beings breeding on the continent of Asia preserve their products exclusively only in a roasted or boiled state, and not when raw, as the contemporary Americans prefer to do, this also occurs there in consequence of the fact that these usages reached the beings of Asia from their ancestors, the term of whose communities was many centuries, and who, in consequence, had a long practical experience, whereas the term of the community of those American beings is still, as our wise teacher would say, only a day and a half. In order that you may better evaluate the significance of this invention of those contemporary beings breeding on the continent America, and which is, as it were, the real outcome of contemporary civilization, I do not consider it superfluous to inform you also of the methods of preserving several other products for a long time, which methods are now in use among the beings of the continent Asia. Such, for instance, is the method of preparing what is called haurma, a particularly favorite product of the beings of many groups of the continent Asia. This haurma on the continent Asia is prepared in a very simple manner, namely, small pieces of well-roasted meat are tightly packed into earthenware jars, or goatskin borduks. A borduk is the skin stripped in a special manner from the being called goat. Melted sheep's tail fat is then poured over these roasted pieces of meat. Although the pieces of roasted meat thus covered with fat do also gradually deteriorate with time, yet over a relatively very long time they do not acquire in themselves any poison. The beings of the continent Asia use this shawarma either cold or heated up. In the latter case, it is as if the meat were freshly killed. Another very favorite product there, preserved for a long time, is what is called yagli yemiş, which consists of nothing else than various fruits. For this purpose, fruits freshly gathered from the tree are immediately strung on a cord in the form of what is called a necklace, and then thoroughly boiled in water. When these odd necklaces are cooled, they also are dipped several times in melted sheep's tail fat, and after all this they are hung up somewhere, where they are exposed to the effects of a current of air. However long fruit prepared in this way may hang, it scarcely ever spoils. And when these odd necklaces are to be used for food, they are put into hot water for a little, whereupon all the fat on them, then being heated, entirely disappears, and the fruit itself is as if it had been freshly picked from the tree. Even though fruit preserved in this manner differs very little in taste from fresh fruit, and will keep a very long time, nevertheless, all the well-to-do beings of the continent Asia prefer fresh fruit. And this is obviously because in most of them, as direct descendants of the beings of long-existing ancient communities, thanks to the possibilities which have reached them by inheritance, the crystallizing of data for the instinctive sensing of reality proceeds much more intensively in them than in most of your other contemporary favorites. I repeat, my boy, that there on your planet, the beings of past epochs, especially those breeding on the continent of Asia, had already many times attempted to use various methods of preserving products for a long time, and it always ended as follows. First of all, certain persons, thanks to their conscious or accidental observations, discovered the undesirable and harmful consequences of this kind of practice, both for themselves and for those near them. And then they communicated this to all the other beings, who, having also made observations with as much impartiality as possible towards themselves, also became convinced of the correctness of these deductions, and ultimately they all ceased to employ these practices in the process of their existence. Even quite recently on this same continent Asia, certain beings again attempted not only to find a method by which it might indeed be possible to preserve their edible products for a long time without deterioration, but they even tried to find some entirely new means for minimizing as much as possible the time spent on this inevitable being need of feeding on the first food. And this time, they were almost on the verge of discovering a very suitable method for this purpose. I can give you satisfactory details concerning interesting results of their new investigations in this sphere, because I not only personally knew the terrestrial three-brained being who by his conscious labors discovered the said method, but was even present personally at several elucidatory experiments upon the possibilities of applying